we go again. I hate getting new neighbors.
Walter Thornbush rocked back and forth ever so slightly on his front porch. The rocking chair had been a Christmas present to himself years back, and it was the second best investment he had ever made. His first best investment lay beside him on the porch. Walter's very best friend, Maurice, was some kind of mutt, a mix between a hound and a boxer. Maurice had short brown hair with various white spots on his coat. He had a completely white tail and a pair of brown floppy ears. He was an older dog, having just celebrated his 11th birthday. Walter didn't mind too much, as he was quite a bit older too. When people asked him how old he was, Walter often responded he was in his younger 50s. At a certain point, Walter just stopped counting. He was a man of average body type, with graying hair that used to be black. Etched wrinkles hung around his bleary brown eyes. Walter wore a pair of New Grace Grandpa shoes, although he had never had any children of his own. A pair of khaki slacks, and an older, worn, dark blue sweater. Walter gently rocked back and forth and stared across the street to where the moving truck was parked. Movers assisted the new family, and they transported all their stuff into their new home. The family looked nice enough, but then again, they always did. There were 3 of them: a husband, a wife, and a little boy.
What do you think about them, Maurice, old boy? My guess this time is, a traveling pack of cannibals. What do you think?
Maurice let out a yawn, looked across the street, and then peered up at Walter.
Demon possession? No way. The demon-possessed house is 4 houses down to the left, right beside the house where the triple homicide took place and across the street from where the thumb collector used to live. Trust me, it's a group of cannibals.
Maurice simply tilted his head to the side and frowned ever so slightly.
Well, suit yourself. We'll see who's right this time.
The wife gazed in their direction and then smiled. She started waving a moment later. As common courtesy dictated, Walter returned her gesture.
Please be antisocial. Please be antisocial. Don't come over to say hello.
The woman started to walk across the street. She was a pretty young woman, most likely gliding into her late 20s or early 30s with dignity and poise. She had light brown hair, a pair of kind blue eyes, and freckles that covered her cheeks. She wore a pair of white pants, some brown sandals, and a dark purple shirt.
Yes, I see she is coming over. Damn it, I hate when things get too personal. Oh, I hate learning their names.
Maurice rose to a stand and wagged his tail vigorously. That only heightened the woman's delight. Slowly, Walter stood up from his rocking chair. His knees groaned a little as he did, but then again, it felt good to get the blood flowing. It was easier to run when the blood was flowing.
Hi there! I'm your new neighbor. It's nice to meet you. My name is Hannah.
Well, hello, Hannah. My name is Walter, and this here is Maurice. I see you have a nice little family over there.
Yes, my husband is a writer, while I am a corporate vice president for a marketing firm. Our son's name is Fenton.
So, what brought you to our neck of the woods? It's a fairly small city without all the bells and whistles of bigger places.
Oh, well, we wanted a change of pace, you know. A chance to get our family back to some good old foundations, you know? And this place looks like it will be a great fresh start for everyone.
Well, I hope you like it here. It is an interesting neighborhood.
Interesting. How so?
Walter sat back down in his rocking chair and gestured for Hannah to sit on the porch. She did so, and Maurice practically hopped beside her. Maurice writhed in delight as the newest resident to the neighborhood petted him and scratched him behind his ears.
Well, you must be a good person. Maurice likes you. He has a great judge of character.
Oh, thank you. He seems like a great dog. So, Walter, how is this neighborhood interesting?
Well, a lot of new people move in and out. So we see a lot of new faces, don't we, Maurice? I think a month ago, a pair of younger women started renting the house down the street. The green one with the ugly elm tree in the front yard.
A pair of women? How young are we talking? Like my age or,
I'd say younger, maybe college age. They throw a lot of parties and are up all hours of the night.
Great. Just great. So, anyone else I should, be aware of?
Anyone currently living in the neighborhood? No, I don't suppose there is anyone else that would be relatively interesting. The real good stuff happened before. This place has a lot of history and most of it quite chilling.
Chilling?
There's a house on the same side of the street as mine, 4 down to the right. That house used to have a real crazy who used to live there. He was known as the Thumb Collector.
The Thumb Collector?
Yes. You see, the story goes that the Thumb Collector was a serial killer from even before I lived here. I've only been living in my house for 30 years or so. But the Thumb Collector had been here even longer than that. He was infamous for driving out around town, kidnapping drifters and killing them. He always kept the thumbs as souvenirs. When the cops finally busted into his place, the walls of his living room were covered in preserved thumbs nailed to the wall.
No way! That can't be true.
Cross my heart and hope to die, it's true. Don't worry, the person who lives there now is a dentist or something. Kind of a boring person, but they're nice enough. And then there's the house directly across the street from that.
Hannah grinned from ear to ear and crossed her arms over her chest.
And what's up with that house?
That house is haunted by a real-life demon.
A demon? Get out.
It's true. A family of 8 moved in, and then a month later, 7 of them were dead. The mother had pledged herself to some dark queen of doom or something and ate the brains of her family.
Any other fun stories?
Before I bought this house, the previous owners were a coven of witches. They were apparently refugees from old Eastern Europe. You wouldn't believe all the crazy stuff I had to clear out of my basement when I moved in.
Honey, what are you doing over there? I was looking all over for you.
The husband started to walk into the yard. He was a tall, muscular, and handsome man. The kind of handsome that most likely got him into compromising situations. He had short black hair, tanned skin, and a pair of brown eyes. Vince wore a pair of expensive-looking loafers, some brown slacks, and a baseball jersey with the number 23 on the front and back of it. As soon as he got within the halfway mark, Maurice leapt from the porch and landed in front of Hannah. The dog's hair raised on end, his lips curled, and Maurice growled.
Whoa, whoa! Get a hold of your goddamn dog, man!
Walter snapped his finger and pointed to the porch.
Maurice, lay down.
Maurice stopped growling and then peered back at Walter with eyes brimming with confused shame. The dog whined a little, but then immediately complied with what was requested of him. He was a good boy like that, Hannah smiled, petted the dog, and then got up from the porch.
Honey, this is Walter and his dog Maurice. As mentioned, this is my husband, Vince.
Vince took another step closer, and once more, Maurice growled. He stayed on the porch, but Maurice's lips curled up and his eyes locked with Vince's.
You need to put a leash on your dog, man. It would be a shame if someone had to call animal control.
Walter rose from the rocking chair and stepped off the porch. Maurice hopped to his paws, but he remained where he was commanded to stay. Hannah stepped between both men, and she held her arms open. Though she didn't say anything, her eyes darted between the two men as the air became saturated with static power.
It would be a shame if someone called the police for trespassing. My dog is here to protect me from those who are unwelcome. And buddy, you are definitely not welcome.
Oh, but she is.
Of course she is. She was nice to my dog, so she can come over anytime. You, on the other hand, can't. I suggest you leave now.
Hannah moved over and gently grabbed Vince by the arm.
Come on, honey. Let's go get more settled in. It was great to meet you, Walter. And you too, Maurice.
It was nice to meet you, Hannah.
Vince and Walter locked gazes for just a second, and an unspoken understanding passed between the pair. Walter stepped back up onto his porch, but he watched his new neighbors go inside their home.
I don't like him either. I have a bad feeling things won't end well for Hannah. Not on this street.
Maurice sat down beside the rocking chair, and he beamed a mournful expression across the street. A month had come and gone, and with it the end of summer was melting away too. The cooler winds from the north raced through the neighborhood, which foretold of a crisp autumn perhaps. Walter loved the fall, specifically for the excuse to wear his comfy sweaters. This morning was especially cooler than the hot weeks that came before. Walter exited his front door with a black trash bag in hand. As it was only him and Maurice, the amount of trash they generated was quite small. Nothing like his new neighbors. 3 trash bags were resting beside their mailbox, although leaving the bags out the night before left them vulnerable. Several holes had been ripped into the bottoms of the bags, with bits of discarded items leaking out. Maybe it was a dog or a possum scrounging for food. A slight chill wiggled up Walter's spine. The little boy, Fenton, stood beside the 3 bags of trash, just looking at them with a set of blank eyes. In terms of age, he looked to be perhaps 9 or so. He wore some green pajamas with some sort of cartoon characters on them. Naturally, Walter didn't recognize them. The last time he had really watched cartoons were the Mooney Tunes. Classic Mooney Tunes. Fenton was barefoot, and his feet were covered in dirt and mud. His arms hung at his sides, and his mouth hung slightly ajar. The kid's hair was messy and unkempt. The closer that Walter got to the road, the more his insides throbbed with panic. What the hell was that little kid doing in his PJs? It was only 5:39 a.m., and surely this was a school day. Did his bus come early? Did kids go to school like that nowadays? Walter gently set his trash bag on the side of the road and then looked around the neighborhood. None of the other houses' lights were on. Silence hung around him like a lead cloak, and he shifted his shoulders as if to cast it off of him. He focused back on the boy, who still stared at the trash. The moisture in Walter's mouth evaporated, and the back of his throat tickled. He cleared his throat once, but the boy continued to stare ahead. Walter cleared his throat again, this time louder, but still nothing.
Hey, kid, are you okay?
Slowly, the boy's head swiveled around, and he peered at Walter with eyes as dead as a doll's. His mouth was a small line beneath a little pointed nose.
The time draws near, and the offering must be made. One innocent and one guilty, emptied completely before the altar of devotion. The offering must be made to unlatch the door.
Walter simply turned around and started walking back up the driveway.
He who is contained must be freed. The rivers must be made crimson, and the land be made barren. Pestilence must be unleashed to abate his boredom.
Nope, not today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not next year. I don't care if it's about to be a new year, new me, none of that. I have seen too many crazy things on this street to get me wrapped up into this. Nope.
The door will open. You will bear witness. You will see the coming of the twilight of mankind. You will fall before him and...
Walter closed the door behind him and locked it firmly.
You will hear the signs of his coming. Do nothing. Stay inside, or I will come for you next.
Walter peered out through his peephole, expecting to see the little child in front of his door. However, the child, Fenton, was still by the trash pile across the street. His eyes were locked on Walter's front door, and perhaps the peephole even. Fenton turned back around and then walked inside. Cold spasms crawled up the center of Walter's back. A small whimper from behind him made him jump. When he turned around, he noticed Maurice standing behind him.
You scared the shit out of me, old friend. You were right, demon possession.
Walter shot up from the bed, and his heart raced. He glanced about and surveyed the dark room around him. It was still and quiet, but he could have sworn he heard a scream, a woman's scream. Walter got up from his bed, slowly turned his lamplight on, and then went into his bedroom closet. His nerves scrambled as he peeked inside, hoping that no one was waiting for him inside. As soon as his shotgun was loaded and in his grasp, he began to scout out his house. Maurice was right beside him, and his ears were perked up.
Oh, God! Someone help! Please!
Walter moved toward his front window, and he tucked one of the blinds down. Hannah was in her front yard, and her front door was wide open. She was wounded and bleeding from a large cut in her right arm. Even from a distance, Walter saw the tears streaming from her cheeks. Other lights in other houses were turning on, and people were looking out from their windows more overtly. Fenton stepped out through the front door, a wicked smile on his face. He pointed, and a moment later, Vince came running out of his house. Blood seeped from a wound on the side of his head. His eyes looked wrong.
No, please! Someone help me! Walter!
Walter winced as the tension thundered inside him. He started to move toward the front door, but then Maurice bit his pant leg. The dog tugged back and growled, preventing him from going forward.
But if we don't do something, then she is gonna die. Maybe I can...
Maurice let go of Walter's leg and whimpered apologetically. Walter moved to the window again. Vince was dragging Hannah inside while Fenton stood on the front porch. Fenton locked eye contact with Walter for a moment, but then he snarled and turned his attention to the house right beside theirs. Walter saw Barbara Kevinson on her front porch with her cell phone in her hand, and she was staring at the scene with horror. Fenton merely pointed at Barbara, then moved back inside the house. As soon as the door was closed behind the terrifying child, a great silence filled the neighborhood. Barbara moved inside her home, and Walter, there was no way he could get back to sleep. He merely laid on his couch and stared up at the ceiling. Within 30 minutes, a dozen police cars arrived on the scene and parked outside the house across the street. An intensity flickered within Walter's insides, and so he went outside to sit in his rocking chair. To his dismay, when the police knocked on Barbara's door, there was no answer. After 5 minutes of knocking, they let themselves in. One of the officers noticed Walter, and a pair of them approached him. Walter stood up slowly and held his hands off to the side.
Good evening, officers.
Good evening, sir. My name is Officer Ketchum, and this is Officer Joy. May we have your name?
My name is Walter Thornbush.
May we please ask you some questions, Mr. Thornbush?
Yes, of course.
Can you please describe what you might have witnessed, sir?
Well, I woke up when I heard a scream, and then I looked outside. I looked outside, and the woman, Hannah, was trying to get away, but her husband, Vince, got her and dragged her inside.
Did you know the victim, sir?
Victim? So she is dead, then?
Yes, although we can't discuss what happened exactly. What we can say is that both the husband and wife are dead.
What about the child?
The child was the only survivor and was already taken by Child Protective Services. Did you notice anything strange about the couple, Mr. Thornbush?
Strange? How so?
Like, strange behavior since they moved in? Anything out of the ordinary?
No. Why do you ask?
It's nothing. I am curious about one thing. Did you attempt to call 911?
No, I didn't.
May I ask why?
Well, I had already seen that my neighbor Barbara was already calling.
For just a moment, both officers glanced at one another with a weighted underlay.
I noticed that you had to bust into her place. Is Barbara all right?
The homeowner was found murdered in her kitchen. However, there were no signs of forced entry. Do you know what might have happened? Did you see anything?
No, I never did.
We might be back with more questions. Please don't leave.
Yes, I'll do that.
The officers moved back toward the other police cars, and so Walter went inside. He plopped down on the couch, but sat in silence.
You will be spared.
Maurice softly padded into the room and peered up at Walter.
How would you like to move to New Hampshire? Nothing ever happens up there.
Maurice started to wag his tail.
Then it's decided, old friend. Let's give it another month and then we're out of here. Now come on up here.
Maurice hopped onto the couch and laid his head on Walter's lap.